Evil swept across Uvalde yesterday. Anyone who shoots his grandmother in the face has to have evil in his heart. But it is far more evil for someone to gun down little kids. It is intolerable.
Fox News alert, we're getting brand new details on the heartbreaking tragedy in Texas. At least 19 children and 2 adults are dead at Robb Elementary School near San Antonio. Police giving more insight into how this terrible event unfolded. Jeff Paul is on the ground with the latest. Jeff.
Yeah, Jesse, we're starting to learn more not only about the shooting, but also about the suspect. According to Texas Governor Greg Abbott, he says about 30 minutes before the shooting, the suspect sent some messages on social media. Now, in one of them, he apparently wrote that he was going to shoot his grandmother. In another, he wrote that he did, in fact, shoot his grandmother. And then in a third, he wrote he was going to go shoot up a nearby elementary school. Investigators confirmed after shooting his grandmother, the suspect then drove off, crashing his truck near Robb Elementary School. From there, officials say he barricaded himself inside a 4th grade classroom. This is where all 21 people died, 19 students and 2 teachers. Now, law enforcement then forced their way in, eventually killing this suspect. Governor Greg Abbott made a point to credit officers who responded without hesitation.
The reason it was not worse is because law enforcement officials did what they do. They showed amazing courage by running toward gunfire for the singular purpose of trying to save lives.
Now, shortly after making that statement, that news conference was then interrupted by Texas Democratic gubernatorial candidate Beto O'Rourke. Before he was removed by police officers, he told the governor that he was doing nothing and that this was totally predictable. Jesse?
Jeff, thanks a lot. All right, Greg, you've had some time to think about what's happened. Want to share that with us?
Well, I mean, you know, this is terrorism, and like terrorism, you find a way to prevent an attack after it occurs, right? That's when you see the variable that you missed. If you hadn't missed the variable, then the attack would have been prevented, so you don't hear about it. So you don't see our blind spots, really, until the consequences occur from those blind spots. And I think we all are always looking for one variable to explain things. For some, it's racism. Others, it's lawlessness or gun control. But I was looking at the last 4 mass shootings, and it's Hispanic male, white male, black male, Asian male. All males, obvious, but the one trait that doesn't matter is obviously race. But there was one strand beyond maleness, and that is mental illness. And it may be the #1 problem in America. This is not a defense of the killing. I'm just trying to, I look outside our streets, the killer, and you see so many broken people who aren't treated. And then in rural and suburban settings, they may just be tucked away. And the pandemic makes it worse through isolation. So we have like a collection of aimless, disturbed, mentally ill males. And in this case, the reason why he wasn't prevented is age. I mean, we've kind of like been able to, like, our mass killers are getting younger and younger and younger because they don't have a history. And it's like the inverse of workplace violence. That's decreased dramatically because we're the ability to see a history of violence in older males. And then there's more security. But in this case, they get younger because those are the ones that can get away with it because they had no history. He was able to buy a gun because he had no criminal history. And the only time he posted on stuff was 30 minutes before. That's not enough time to act. I mean, they tried, but...
That is interesting. The male component, being able to purchase the weapon because your slate is clean, and missed warning signs throughout the community, throughout the family, and throughout the school, Martha.
Yeah, you know, I think Greg makes a great point about the variance in all of the people that we've seen, and then the things that they have in common, which is this mental health issue, right? And I think back to, I know all of us, when we started to learn what had happened here yesterday, you just go right back to Sandy Hook because it has a lot of similarities, right? You have this young man, and I think about in Adam Lanza's case, we later learned that there had been efforts to commit him. that he was afraid that his mother was going to do that to him, right? And one of the things that has totally broken down in society is that option. Okay, the option of relying on an institution, a hospital, where someone who is not able to function in society can go for treatment. And what happened is, decades ago, we decided that these places were not operating well, right? And some of them weren't. Some of them were absolutely horrific. But the thing is that we decided to mainstream everybody, right, and medicate everybody. So now you've got this overabundance of people who live out in the public who maybe can't really function that way. It's interesting to me, I went on the website for the high school, and one of the things that we learned is that he wasn't going to graduate. And this is devastating for someone his age. He worked at a Wendy's where they started to notice that his behavior wasn't right. COVID kept him home. He dropped out during COVID. This is another nexus that is really important, I think, in this story in terms of the isolation that was happening at this point. We don't know about his parents. There's some reports that his mother had problems with drugs. But graduation is this Friday night at that high school, right? And there's pictures on the website of all the kids that are graduating. And I heard another reporter this morning say that they have pictures all up and down the street in town because they're proud of these kids that are graduating, right? And this impact, these are not excuses. These are just sort of what we look at as the data points and the things that perhaps somebody could have picked up on. And also, and I know we're going to talk about this in the next block, but we got to talk about the school security issue because there's a lot of questions. They were doing a lot in that regard that didn't seem to be working.
No, it didn't. Jeff brought it up at the top. Beto O'Rourke crashed this press conference. Let's play a little bit of that.
He needs to get his ass out of here. This isn't the place to talk this over.
This is totally predictable when you...
Sir, you're out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Please leave this auditorium. I can't believe you're a sick son of a would come to a deal like this to make a political issue.
So the person who called him a sick son of a... That was the mayor of the town this happened at, Janine.
Well, it's Texas. And that was about as inappropriate at a time when the governor was recognizing the pain, the grief, the healing that they're trying to begin, the fact that they have been traumatized and will remain traumatized, that small town, for decades, especially the children in the school. And for him to come and make a political statement is such a cheap political shot. And I believe he should have been shot down for that. This is not the time for politics. Today is the time to recognize the horror that has been imposed upon this town and these families and these victims. And it's a time to think about what we can do so that no other child has to suffer this kind of disaster or trauma again. But, when we talk about mental illness, one of the things that concerns me is it's just this kind of amorphous blob, mental illness. The Buffalo shooter taught us that when someone seems incapable of functioning in our society, we send them for a 730, which is what I used to do when I was a judge. If I thought someone was a danger to himself or a danger to others, I would send him for a psychiatric review. Now they're doing the psychiatric review. They're letting them out. The guy in Buffalo goes out and kills 10 people, or the guy who traveled to Buffalo, I should say. And, a lot of these people are not necessarily mentally insane. This is not insanity. Insanity is when you don't know where you are. You're in a state where you can't tell time or relevance or what's going on. This guy's predicting what he's going to do. He's saying, I just did it. Now I'm going to go do this. So the question for us today is how we can come together and heal. The pain for everyone. I don't care if you're a progressive or you're a right-wing person. I don't care what you are. We all bleed. I'm a mother and a grandmother, and I bleed for this grieve for this kind of trauma. We all imagine it happening to our loved ones. So one of the things we have to do is we have to make sure that we start prosecuting crime. And I'm not going to be political here. I want to prosecute crimes. I want to prosecute gun crimes. I want to know, and we'll talk about this in the next block, the crumbs. There were some crumbs. We know that he's from a broken home. We know that he's a loner. We know that he was self-injuring himself. We know that he was made fun of because he has a lisp and because apparently he wore eyeliner. We know that there was violent rhetoric from people he worked with and that he was isolated. I mean, you know, but does that mean we can go out and arrest him? No. So let's not just throw it out at mental health. Let's try to harden the facilities, which we'll talk about in the next block.
Geraldo, the judge makes a really important point. Say you send someone to a psych ward and they're not insane. They're evil. They're a sociopath. How do you address that?
I don't know. I think that we have to come to grips with the fact that there's mental illness in every country on earth, but these mass homicides, with rare exceptions, are an American phenomenon. Every country has crazy people. Why is it here that they result in such slaughter? But I just want to say a different thing. I want to go in a different direction, because I am sorry and ashamed that we haven't done more to protect these children. And I was listening to Jeff Paul's, our correspondent's report just then. And he talked about how all of the fatalities were from that one classroom. So there's 19 children and 2 teachers. So regardless of the kind of weapon you have, you know, it takes time. You got to shoot. So imagine the terror that these children in that room are feeling when this animal is now killing them. He's barricaded himself in their classroom. Now he's killing them. And he kills Johnny, and he kills Sarah, and he kills Mikey, and this and that. I cannot fathom the terror that these children endured. I mean, for that, all of us, there's no ideology, there's no difference left, right. We all, parents, grandparents, no children, the way we feel. How is the human being capable of that kind of despicable, heartless? It is beyond.
It's beyond description and very emotional for everybody involved.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.